Tom Reynolds had always thought of his home as a sanctuary. The house he and Sarah had bought together 5 years ago wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It was a place where memories were built, arguments were forgiven, and love was supposed to thrive. But last Friday, as he walked through the door after work, the weight of reality slammed into him like a freight train. Sarah, the woman he had loved, laughed at him in a way that was sharp, cutting, and utterly merciless. "You actually think this is your home, Tom?" she had said earlier, her words dripping with mockery over the phone. "You'll be lucky if you even get a coat back." When he arrived, the scene confirmed every bitter suspicion. The furniture was gone. Her clothes, his books, the little plants he had nurtured on the balcony. They had all vanished. Only a single note lay on the kitchen counter, written in Sarah's precise, mocking script. "Consider this lesson in independence. Don't call me." For a moment, Tom just stood there. The echo of emptiness in the rooms mirrored the hollowness he felt inside. He had been blindsided. They had argued before, yes, about bills, about chores, about the subtle tension that had grown between them. But never like this. Never had Sarah carried out a gesture so cold, so definitive. It was more than betrayal. It was a performance, and he had been cast as the fool. Yet beneath the sting of humiliation, a slow-burning clarity began to take shape. He had always prided himself on being patient, on understanding, on giving Sarah the benefit of the doubt. But in that moment, he realized patience had its limits, and understanding without boundaries was nothing more than weakness disguised as virtue. The phone rang. Sarah's mother's name flashed on the screen, but Tom ignored it. He didn't need to hear pleas or explanations. He didn't need to justify anything to anyone who had sided with her cruelty. Instead, he walked to the living room window, looking out at the street they had once shared laughter on, and allowed himself to plan. This was not the first time he had felt blindsided in life, but never before had he turned such betrayal into a battlefield of strategy. The note, the empty house, her smug satisfaction. It was all a signal. Sarah thought she had the upper hand. She thought he was powerless. She thought the man she had married could be reduced to nothing more than a punchline. But she was wrong. As Tom stared at the space where the couch had once been, where they had spent countless evenings watching movies and arguing about trivial things, a sense of resolve hardened in his chest. This wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. It wasn't about calling the cops or lawyers or dramatic confrontations. No, this was about reclaiming control in the most subtle, devastatingly effective way imaginable. Tom spent the night in the quiet of his empty home. Not a single trace of Sarah to remind him of what had been lost, yet every corner whispering of the life they once shared. The silence was heavier than any argument they had had, and heavier than the humiliation he had endured. But instead of breaking him, it sharpened him. He realized that Sarah's need to mock him, to show power over him, had given him a unique advantage. She had exposed her own arrogance, her belief that he was too weak to fight back. Morning came, and with it, a clarity that had been absent in the haze of shock. He called in sick to work. He didn't need sympathy from anyone, and he certainly didn't need to explain himself to co-workers who would only take one side of the story. Instead, Tom began to act. He knew Sarah's habits, her patterns, and her predictable desire for recognition. She liked to flaunt control, show the world that she was untouchable, and he intended to turn that against her. He started small. The security cameras around the house, installed long ago for peace of mind, had recorded every step she had taken while moving out. Tom reviewed each clip meticulously. Every detail, every truck that arrived, every box moved, every last smirk on her face. It was all there. He documented it, time-stamped it, and stored it safely. The psychological satisfaction was immediate. For someone who prided himself on rationality, this was a rare feeling of empowerment. Next, he contacted a close friend, one who knew the entire history of their marriage and had quietly supported him through minor betrayals and disagreements. He didn't tell them what he planned. He just asked, quietly, for advice on logistics, on navigating empty homes, on ensuring that any confrontation would always favor the unseen strategist. His friend, wise and loyal, understood the unspoken. Sarah had underestimated him, and that mistake would be her undoing. By mid-afternoon, Tom had a plan forming in his mind, not born from anger, but from cold calculation. He imagined her coming home, expecting to see a broken man, expecting him to flinch, to apologize, or worse, to beg. She would find none of that. The house might have been empty, but Tom's presence, his control, his unspoken strategy was everywhere. Every step she would take, every expectation she held, would crumble silently around her. And the anticipation of that moment, just the thought of Sarah standing in what she thought was her victory, brought a strange sense of satisfaction. Not gloating, not cruelty, but precision. She had mocked him. She had believed him powerless. She had played her hand. And now, he would quietly ensure that she realized her mistake, not with shouts or chaos, but with the subtle, unavoidable truth of his strategy. Tom spent the next day moving silently through his life, leaving no trace that he was plotting his next move. He contacted a professional moving company, not to remove more furniture, but to place subtle, traceable items in strategic locations, knowing Sarah would notice. Everything was done with the quiet precision of someone who knew that timing and perception mattered more than confrontation. That evening, as predicted, Sarah returned. She had expected to see him defeated, slouched on the couch, perhaps even tearful. Instead, she was met with emptiness. Every chair, every personal item gone. The living room looked clean, almost staged, but it wasn't the absence of objects that struck her. It was a silent message. Tom was not here because he had been defeated. He was here because he had outmaneuvered her. Her smug expression faltered for the first time in years. She walked from room to room, checking closets, the kitchen, even the balcony, her steps quickening, her voice rising with frustration. "Where's everything?" she demanded, her tone cracking slightly. But no one answered her. There was no confrontation, no visible presence, only the echo of her own misjudgment. Tom had anticipated every reaction. Sarah had always thrived on control, an illusion of power. By removing the furniture and leaving behind only the carefully documented traces, he had created a psychological trap. Each item she expected to find, each sign of his supposed weakness, was gone. And yet, she had no evidence that she had actually won. For Tom, it was not just about the house or the items. It was about proving something larger. He had always believed in quiet resilience, in the power of patience and careful calculation. Sarah's mockery had been the spark, but it was his foresight, his ability to stay calm and think several steps ahead, that had truly shifted the balance. By the time she realized the full extent of what had happened, the moment would already be sealed. Hours passed. Sarah called friends, tried to text him, even reached out to his colleagues, anyone she thought could influence him or pressure him into submission. But Tom remained unreachable, his silence a weapon more potent than any words could have been. Each failed attempt to control reinforced his position, and with it, the lesson Sarah had so arrogantly ignored. He was never powerless, and her assumptions had been fatally flawed. By nightfall, the house was quiet again. Tom finally stepped inside, not as a victim, not as a defeated husband, but as a man who had quietly reclaimed his life, his property, and, most importantly, his dignity. The emptiness of the rooms was no longer a symbol of loss. It was a testament to his mastery of the situation. Sarah's mockery, once so sharp and demeaning, had been turned into the very vehicle of her humiliation. She had believed she was in control, but control had always been an illusion, one he had carefully dismantled with patience, strategy, and calm resolve. And as he looked around at the empty house, a small, satisfied smile crossed his face. This was not just victory. It was justice served in its purest, quietest form.